The twin suns of planet Braga shone hot over the great arena. Thousands of Bragans filled the stone seats, shouting and roaring with wild energy. They were tall and wide creatures with thick arms and scales like armor. Every year, they held the grand trial, where fighters from across the galaxy came to test their strength. It was not just a game, it was their way of showing who deserved respect. This year, a human had joined the trials. His name was Tom. He stood at the edge of the arena, quiet and still. His clothes were plain. His hands looked soft. His skin was smooth. There were no scars, no marks, no sign of battle. The Bragans noticed right away. "Look at his hands," one shouted from the crowd. "He has never held a sword," laughed another. "A farmer, maybe a cook," roared a third, slapping his belly. In amusement, even the announcer, a deep-voiced Bragan elder, could not help but joke. "Here comes Tom the Soft. Let us see if his pillows can stop a fist." The crowd burst into laughter again. Tom did not react. He stood calmly, eyes forward, lips closed. His hand stayed at his side. He did not wave or nod. He looked like he was just waiting for a bus. The other fighters arrived one by one. Each one was bigger than Tom. Some had thick arms like tree trunks. Others carried weapons forged from dark stone and heated with red fire. There was a lizard man with iron claws, a four-armed brute from the ice belt, and a machine warrior with metal plates across his chest. They all stared at Tom. One spat near his feet. Another shook his head. "Wrong place, soft boy," the lizard man hissed. "You came to the kitchen instead of the killing ground." Tom looked at him for 1 second, then turned his gaze back to the arena gate. The first challenge was about to begin. A loud horn rang through the air. The crowd quieted for a moment. The gate at the end of the arena opened slowly, and dust rose into the sky. From behind the gate came giant stone blocks, each taller than a man. The trial was simple. Lift the block and carry it across the line. The lizard man stepped forward first. He roared, grabbed the block, and lifted it with both hands. His muscles bulged. His legs shook. But he moved forward, one step at a time, and crossed the line. The crowd cheered. The ice brute came next. He roared louder. He lifted the block higher. He ran across the line and threw the stone down. The crowd cheered louder. Then came Tom. He stepped forward without a word. He touched the stone block and ran his hand along the edge. Then he bent his knees, slid his fingers underneath, and lifted. The stone moved with slow control. He did not shout. He did not tremble. He walked calmly and placed the block down right on the line. Silence. The Bragans waited for something funny to happen. Maybe he would fall. Maybe he would trip. But he did not. He turned and walked away. A few quiet laughs broke out in the back rows. But they were weak. The second trial was speed. The fighters had to run across a field of shifting tiles. The floor moved, rolled, and cracked open with sudden holes. If they fell, they failed. The Bragans loved this one. It showed who had fast feet and strong legs. The four-armed brute charged first. He stomped across the tiles. One leg fell into a hole, but he pulled himself up and made it. Next came the machine warrior. He jumped with metal legs and rolled across the end line. Tom stepped up. He looked at the field with careful eyes. He took one breath, then moved. He didn't run. He didn't leap. He flowed. His feet stepped lightly. His body leaned side to side. Every time a tile shifted, he moved like he saw it before it happened. In 10 seconds, he was across. No noise came from the crowd. The announcer tried to break the silence. "Well then, even soft hands can dance." A few forced laughs came from the stands. But many Bragans were now watching with squinted eyes. "Maybe he got lucky," one said. "No human can match a Bragan," said another. "Luck is all he has." That night, in the fighter camp, Tom sat alone by the fire. Others were drinking, laughing, hitting each other on the shoulders. Some pointed at him and laughed again. One fighter, a Bragan named Crawl, walked over with a smirk. "You move fast, soft one," Crawl said. "But tomorrow, the real test comes. No more dancing. Only fists. Let us see what your smooth fingers Can do then. Tom looked up at him. Let us see, he replied quietly. Then he went back to warming his hands by the fire. Morning came with a sharp wind across the sand. The second day of trials had begun. The Bragans woke with loud roars and slammed fists. Fighters from many worlds stretched. Cracked bones and sharpened weapons. The air smelled of fire and sweat. Tom rose quietly from his place. He cleaned his hands with a cloth and walked toward the trial gates without a word. His steps were calm. His eyes were clear. The soft skin on his fingers looked no different than yesterday. Inside the arena, the next trial stood ready. A large beast, taller than two men, roared behind steel bars. It had thick red fur and claws like blades. Its eyes were yellow and full of rage. This trial was not about strength or speed. It was about survival. Each fighter had to step into the ring and stay alive for 1 full minute with the beast. The Bragans called it the Blood Beast. Many had faced it. Few had escaped without scars. The machine warrior went first. He had armor and energy shields. The gate opened. The beast charged. Sparks flew as metal met claws. The warrior rolled, blocked, and fired small blasts. He lasted the full minute, but limped out with a deep gash across his side. Next came the ice brute. He carried a hammer of frozen steel. He shouted and rushed the beast. They clashed hard. The brute slammed the hammer into its side. The beast roared and knocked him across the floor. Time ended. He was bleeding but alive. Then the announcer called the next name. Human fighter. Tom, step forward. Tom walked into the ring with empty hands. The crowd leaned forward. Some laughed again. Others stayed quiet this time. The steel gate opened. The beast roared and leaped toward him. Tom moved to the side, smooth and quick. The claws missed by inches. The beast turned fast. But Tom had already shifted. He did not attack. He did not run. He kept moving in small steps, always staying just far enough. The beast tried again. It swiped with both claws. Tom dropped low and rolled under. Then he stood and backed away. Time kept ticking. The crowd watched without sound. The beast grew wild. It pounded the floor and charged once more. Tom stepped aside again. The beast hit the wall. Dust rose. Time ended. The gate opened. The beast turned away. Tom walked out without a scratch. Now, the silence in the arena was heavy. Even the announcer paused before speaking. Fast feet. Empty hands. But still standing. The next trial came fast. It was called the Gauntlet. A long path filled with traps, spinning blades, fire bursts, and falling hammers. The fighters had to run through without stopping. The goal was to reach the end and hit the gong. The lizard man went first. He leaped over flames and crawled under blades. A hammer struck his leg. But he pushed forward and made it. The four-armed brute followed. He smashed the first traps, broke to spinning wheels, and reached the gong with smoke rising from his back. Then it was Tom's turn. He looked at the path with steady eyes. Then he moved. He didn't smash. He didn't jump wild. He timed every step. He moved with clean motion. A blade dropped from above, but he leaned just enough. A fire burst lit up the side. But he waited one breath before stepping through. Hammers swung, but he slipped between them like wind through grass. At the end, he tapped the gong softly. The sound rang clear. This time, no one laughed. That night, Tom sat by the fire again. But now the camp was different. The other fighters looked at him in a new way. They did not joke. They watched him with quiet eyes crawl. The Bragan who had mocked him before stepped forward again. "You are fast," Crawl said. "But these are just games, tricks, and steps. The real trial comes tomorrow. The arena, no beast, no trap, only fists. There, we will see who you are." Tom looked up. "We will see," he said again. Crawl frowned and walked away, far from the fire. The Bragan guards spoke in hushed voices. "He moves like water. He has not taken a hit, not even one. Do you think he will last against Goran?" The second guard went silent. Then he shook his head. "No one lasts against Goran." In a deep hall below the arena, the Bragan champion sat on a stone chair. His name was Goran, And he had never lost a fight. His arms were thicker than logs. His chest was covered in old scars. He crushed metal cups with one hand. His roar could shake the walls. He watched the trial videos on a screen. His eyes followed Tom. When the beast missed, when the fire failed to touch him, when the hammers swung and missed by a hair. Goran narrowed his eyes. He is not strong, he said. The room stayed silent. He is not one of us, Goran said. Then he rose from his seat and cracked his knuckles. But I will break him. The sky above the arena turned orange as evening light fell on the stone walls. The crowd returned in greater numbers than before. Flags waved in the hot wind. Drums beat from every corner. This was the final day. This was the arena match. All other trials were done. Only the fighters had made it to the end. One was the Bragan champion. The other was the quiet human with soft hands. The Bragans waited for their hero. They pounded their chests and shouted one name again and again. Goran, Goran, Goran. He was not just a fighter. He was a symbol. For 10 years, no one had touched him. No one had lasted more than 5 minutes. He did not dodge. He did not hide. He crushed, broke, and ended every fight with brutal force. The arena shook as the champion's gate opened. Goran stepped out wearing dark armor across his legs and shoulders. His chest was bare, covered in old cuts and burns from past battles. His fists were wrapped in thick bands. His eyes were cold. He did not smile. When the crowd saw him, they screamed with joy. Some threw flowers. Some held signs made of metal. With his name burned into them, the ground under his steps seemed to crack. In the other corner, Tom stood alone. He wore the same plain clothes. His hands had no wraps. His face was calm. He did not look at the crowd. He looked only at Goran. Goran walked to the center and raised one arm. This ends today, Goran said loudly. Enough tricks, enough soft steps. This is real now. He looked straight at Tom. You brought a baker to a battle. Let us see if your soft fingers can fix your broken bones. The crowd laughed at that. Tom said nothing. He walked to the center and bowed his head slightly. The announcer stepped forward. Fighters ready. The final match begins now. A loud bell rang across the sky. The crowd rose to its feet. The fight had begun. Goran charged forward at full speed. His fists came down like hammers. The ground under his steps shook. Dust rose high. Tom did not move. At the last second, he stepped aside. Goran's punch hit the stone floor. A crack spread wide. The crowd gasped. Goran turned and swung again. Tom leaned back, letting the fist pass just in front of his face. Another swing. Tom ducked low. Goran roared. He swung both arms in a wild motion. Tom spun away and backed up 5 steps. Still not a single punch had touched him. The crowd, once full of cheers, now grew quiet. Goran growled. Stop running and fight me. Tom spoke his first words in the ring. I'm fighting you. Goran roared again. He picked up a chunk of broken stone and threw it at Tom. Tom rolled to the side and came up on his feet without effort. Then, for the first time, Tom stepped forward. He moved fast. 1 step, then 2. His hand struck Goran's shoulder. Not a punch, a tap, but Goran flinched. Tom stepped back. Goran's eyes widened. He felt pain where there should be none. You hit like a feather, Goran said. But his voice was lower now. Tom waited. Goran came again, fist flying in every direction. His rage was clear. The air was hot with his breath. But every time he moved, Tom was already out of reach. Then Tom struck again. A sharp blow to Goran's side. Then a strike to the elbow. Then one behind the knee. Goran stepped back. The crowd stared in silence. For the first time in all his fights, Goran had stepped back. He touched his side. It hurt. He moved his arm. It was slower. His leg felt heavy. Tom stayed where he was, breathing slow and steady. You will not last, Goran said, but the words sounded unsure. I do not need to last, Tom replied. I only need to end it. The crowd began to whisper. Is this really happening? He is hurting the champion. Look at his hands. They are still clean. Goran roared once more. He ran forward with all his weight. He lifted his arms and slammed down both fists. Tom moved under them, grabbed Goran's wrist with both hands, turned his body, and twisted. The sound of breaking bone echoed across the arena. Goran screamed. He dropped to one knee. Tom stepped behind him, took hold of both arms, and moved again with a smooth turn. Another crack. Both of Goran's arms fell useless at his sides. The Bragan champion was broken. He did not fall, but he could not fight. Tom stepped away. The announcer did not speak. He looked at the fallen champion, then at the human. He raised one arm and said one word, victory. The crowd did not cheer. They stood in silence. Some dropped their flags. Some stared without blinking. Their champion had not been beaten by brute force. He had been taken apart by soft hands. Tom looked at the crowd for the first time. Then he bowed and walked away. The arena stayed silent even after Tom walked away. The crowd did not move. Some still stared at the center of the field where Goran, the champion of Braga, was on his knees. His arms hung loose. His breath was heavy. His face showed pain, but also shock. He had never felt this before. Not fear, but something close to it. Guards ran to him. They helped him to his feet, but Goran pushed them away. He stood on his own. Though it hurt, he looked in the direction Tom had gone. He beat me, Goran said softly, and he didn't even try to destroy me. One of the guards spoke. He used no blade, no weapon, just his hands. Goran looked at his own broken arms. Yes, his soft hands. In the hallway below the arena, Tom walked alone. He moved slowly, breathing steady. He was not smiling. He looked tired, but not hurt. A few Bragan workers stepped aside when they saw him. None of them dared to speak. He reached the fighters' resting room and sat on the bench. A glass of water sat near a small table. He picked it up and drank quietly. The door opened. A tall Bragan elder entered. His scales were dark blue, and he wore a heavy cloak. I'm Darnuk, the elder said, High Judge of the trials. Tom looked at him and nodded. I have watched these games for 50 years. Darnuk continued. I have seen giants win. I have seen fire breathers, stone smashers, and metal-skinned monsters. But I have never seen anyone fight the way you did. I don't fight to crush, Tom said. I fight to finish. Darnuk stepped closer. You broke the champion. You changed something in our people. I didn't come here to change anyone, Tom replied. I came because I was invited. That is true, Darnuk said. But now that you've won, we must understand what comes next. Tom stood up. Nothing comes next for me. I'm going home. Darnuk stared at him for a moment. You may not want power, but power has found you. Tom didn't answer. He picked up his small bag and walked past the elder. Outside the arena, the city of Braga felt different. The streets were filled with quiet voices. Traders talked in low tones. Fighters walked without pride. Statues of Goran still stood tall, but people no longer looked at them with the same eyes. In the central plaza, a large screen replayed the fight. The moment Goran's arms broke, the crowd in the street froze. Even children stood still. One child looked at his father and asked, why didn't the human kill him? The father said nothing. In another part of the city, a group of young Bragans trained in the sand yard. One of them raised his fists and shouted, smash like Goran. But another boy said, no, move like Tom. The first boy laughed. You want soft hands? The second boy said, he won, didn't he? Their trainer watched and said, both strength and skill matter, but maybe we've only been teaching one. That evening, Goran sat in the healer's hall. His arms were wrapped in metal bands to help the bones grow back. His mind was restless. He had not slept. His body ached, but that was not what bothered him. It was the feeling of being seen as weak. It had never happened before. A group of high warriors entered the hall. They stood before him with serious faces. You are still champion in name. One of them said, but you lost in front of all. I know what happened, Goran said. We cannot let a human take our honor, said another. Say he cheated. Say he used poison or some trick. No, Goran said, standing up. He beat me fair, with skill and control. I saw it. You saw it. Deny it. and we become fools. The room went quiet. One younger warrior asked, "What do we do now?" Gorn looked out the window. "We learn. We stop laughing at what we don't understand. And we train not just our fists, but our minds." Tom sat in his transport ship, ready to leave Braga. He looked out the small window as the engines warmed up. The stars above the sky started to shine. A voice came from behind him. "You are not like the others," said a woman's voice. Tom turned. It was a Bragan scholar. She wore a robe of deep green and carried a small data pad. "I study old fighting ways," she said. "Your style. It matches no record in our files." Tom nodded. "It comes from Earth, from an old art. We do not always use strength to win. Will you teach it to us?" she asked. Tom thought for a moment. "Only if you stop laughing first." She smiled. "I think we already have." Back in the arena, workers cleaned the broken floor. The deep crack where Gorn struck was still there, but no one asked to fix it. They wanted to remember that day. Above the highest gate, a new carving had begun. It was not a picture of Gorn. It was not a weapon or a fire beast. It was a hand, not large, not sharp, just soft and open. The hand of the human who had changed everything. The next sun rose over Braga, but the city did not return to its old ways. The ground was the same, the sky unchanged, but something inside the people had shifted. The silence after the match stayed in their minds. It followed them to the markets, to the training halls, and to the war schools. In the past, strength was all that mattered. Every young Bragan was told to fight with power, to crush faster, hit harder, and never step back. But now they had seen something different. A man who looked weak had defeated their strongest champion without rage, without hate, and without fear. In the center of the city, a large crowd gathered around the statue being built. The soft hand was now fully carved. Some still shook their heads, others stood quietly, thinking deeply. One young boy looked at his mother and asked, "Can hands like that really win battles?" The mother replied, "We saw it with our own eyes." Inside the champion's hall, Gorn sat alone. His arms were still healing, but his thoughts were louder than his pain. He watched the replay of the fight again. This was the 5th time today. He looked closely at each move. Every step Tom had taken was simple, but perfect. No waste, no panic. He remembered how the first hit had felt. It was not strong like a hammer. It was sharp, fast, and placed right on a nerve. Then came the hit behind the knee. Then the twist. His arms had not been crushed. They had been broken with knowledge. A voice called from the door, "Champion, the council is ready." Gorn stood. "Not champion. Not anymore." The Bragan messenger looked down. "The council still calls you that." "They should not," Gorn said. "But I will speak." The council chamber was full. Elders sat at the round table. Warriors stood at the sides. A large screen showed Tom's image frozen mid-fight. Some elders looked uncomfortable. Some looked angry. "We must speak the truth," said Elder Kern. "We were humiliated." "He is one man," said another. "But now he makes us look small." "He did not mock us," Gorn said. Stepping forward, "He came when invited. He fought with control. And he left with respect." "You defend him?" Elder Kern asked. "I respect him," Gorn replied. "He showed something we have not seen. Precision, timing, calm. He showed that power is not only in muscle." Elder Kern frowned. "You sound weak." Gorn raised his voice. "I sound changed." The room went quiet. "I trained my whole life to crush and destroy," Gorn said. "And I did. But I never trained to think. I never trained to feel the rhythm of a fight. I only used force." He looked at the screen. "He used everything." Else the younger warrior stepped forward. "Can we learn this way?" "I believe we must," Gorn said. "Or we will keep losing when real skill arrives." In the outer districts of the city, new training groups had already begun. One of the first was led by a warrior named Bryn. She had seen the fight live and could not forget how Tom had moved. She stood before 20 young Bragans and raised one hand. "Today we learn balance," she said. One of the boys laughed. "Balance does not win battles." Bryn stepped close and tapped his leg in one fast motion. The boy dropped to his knees with a sharp yelp. she said. Now, do you still want to laugh? The other students stood straight. No one spoke again. They trained in silence that day. Not to break stone, but to move like wind, to feel the ground, and to understand the space between strikes. Across the district, more schools began to add new lessons. Videos of earth martial arts were studied. Movements were copied. Some call it the soft style. Others call it the human way. But all agreed it had power. Back in his ship, now far from Braga, Tom sat in the small control room. He had not sent any messages. He had not told anyone on Earth what happened. He did not care for fame. He had only come to test himself, and now the test was done. His hands rested on the table. A small screen played a message from Bryn. It showed her students learning a simple step move. "We now train the way you fought," she said in the message. "They are slow, but they are learning." Tom smiled a little, then turned off the screen. Another message came in. This one was from Goran. The Bragan champion stood in front of a stone wall. "I did not ask for a rematch," Goran said. "I asked for a lesson." Tom listened carefully. Goran continued, "Come back when ready. Teach us what you know. Help us grow stronger, not just in arms, but in mind." Tom looked at his hands, the same hands the Bragans had once mocked. He closed his fingers into a light fist, not for harm, but for focus. Then he pressed the reply button. The stars shone bright as Tom's ship landed softly on the dusty ground of Braga. The air smelled of heat and stone. The city had changed. The streets were cleaner. The people walked with new purpose. Tom stepped down and looked around. He saw warriors training with different moves. No longer was the pounding and smashing the only sound. Now, soft steps, light taps, and smooth turns filled the air. Bryn waited near the gates. She smiled when she saw Tom. "You came back," she said. "Simply, I came to teach," Tom replied. They walked together through the training yards. Young Bragans practiced with no weapons. They moved slowly, but with focus. Their eyes were sharp. Their hands were steady. Bryn led Tom to a large hall. Inside, Goran waited. His arms were stronger now, but still healing. He stood taller than all others. His eyes held respect. "Welcome back, human," Goran said. Tom nodded. "Thank you for asking me." The warriors gathered. Some looked doubtful, some curious. All wanted to see what the soft hands could teach. Tom began with basics. "Strength is not only muscle," he said. "It is also control, timing, and calm." He showed simple moves, how to breathe with the body, how to watch an opponent's eyes and feet, how to move without noise. The Bragans tried. At first, they stumbled. Their large bodies were not used to gentle steps. Some laughed at their own mistakes. Goran watched quietly. Then he stood and tried. His first steps were heavy. He lost balance, but he did not stop. Slowly, he began to feel the rhythm. His moves grew sharper. His arms did not just hit. They found places that made a fight easier. Tom smiled. "You learn fast." The next days were filled with training. Tom taught not only fighting, he taught patience, respect for the body and mind. He taught that a fight was not just force, but thinking. In the evenings, Bryn and Tom talked about Earth and Braga. She asked about human ways and stories. Tom told her about old martial arts, calm warriors, and wise teachers. Bryn listened carefully. "This changes how we see power." "Yes," Tom said. "Power comes from knowing yourself and your limits." The city began to change too. Warriors stopped fighting in anger and pride. Instead, they fought to learn. Tournaments were less about who crushed hardest. They were about who moved best, who could outthink their opponent. Children played games that tested balance and speed. Teachers added new lessons about breathing and focus. Goran became one of Tom's best students. He still held his place as champion, but now he was also a teacher. He told stories of his old fights and what he learned from the human. One day, Goran brought a group of young warriors to Tom. "We want to learn more," Goran said. "Teach us how to break an opponent with soft hands." Tom smiled. "That comes later. First, you must master control." They trained long hours. The warriors learned to feel their own bodies. They learned to move quietly and strike softly. But with power, their large muscles did not waste energy. Their hands became quick, not just strong. News of Tom's teaching spread beyond Braga. Other planets sent fighters to learn from him. Humans and Bragans worked together. They shared knowledge and respect. The arena was no longer just a place for battle. It became a school of skill. Warriors came to grow, not just to fight. One day, as Tom walked through the city, a young boy ran to him. "Teacher, will you show me how to move like you?" Tom knelt and smiled. "Yes, but first, you must learn to be patient." He took the boy's hand and began to teach him the first step, soft, steady, and sure. In the quiet night, Tom looked at the stars. He thought about his journey, from being laughed at for his soft hands to teaching a new way of strength. He understood now that power was more than muscle. It was heart, mind, and control. And with that, he was ready for whatever came next. Years passed on the planet Braga. The city grew brighter. The people grew wiser. The arena still rang with the sounds of battle, but something was different now. The old ways had changed. Strength alone was no longer the path to honor. Tom's name became known across many worlds. Stories told of the human with soft hands who broke a mighty champion without cruel force. He had shown that power could be gentle, smart, and patient. His teaching had planted new seeds in the hearts of the Brag-ANS. schools. Children learned to balance their steps before they lifted their fists. Warriors practiced calm breathing. Before they charged, leaders spoke of wisdom as well as strength. One day, a festival was held to celebrate the change. The city square was filled with light, music, and laughter. Statues stood tall, not only of great warriors, but also of hands held open, of quiet faces, and of steady steps. Goran, once the unbreakable champion, stood among the crowd. His arms were strong again. His eyes shone with new respect. He told the young fighters how he had met Tom and what he had learned. Power is not just the hardest punch. Goran said, "It is the mind that moves the hand, the calm that guides the strike." This we learned from a human. A stranger with soft hands. The crowd cheered. Children who once thought only muscle mattered now dreamed of learning the soft style. Far away, on Earth, Tom watched messages from Braga. He smiled as he saw young Bragans moving with grace and focus. He knew his journey was more than a battle. It was a bridge between worlds. Tom's hands, once laughed at, had changed the culture. He walked outside his quiet home. The wind touched his face. He breathed deeply and felt peace. The future was open. Strength and skill would grow side by side. Old fights would become new lessons. And somewhere in the stars, the story of soft hands would continue to inspire those who believed true power was more than muscle.